All
All
right.
right. Should I leave that into the podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm here with Xavier Gomez, so we're back. This is my first podcast back in about 2 years or something like that. Um, I mean, what happened was the pandemic was over, and I was working, and I only had time to do one, and there was a different market for the A's. So, but I'm back doing this, and we're gonna talk about the Warriors. It's been an interesting, wild season so far. Obviously, the main addition to the new team has been Chris Paul. The main subtraction has been Jordan Poole. A different team makeup. I wrote a piece for Fan First Sports a couple weeks ago about how the Warriors did not address Xavier in the offseason, getting some veterans in to help out in the offense in the second unit because they were relying on the young guys, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and others. It seems like Brandon Podjemski has also been a part of that. But what's your team? What's your like thought process behind the team makeup so far? Because I know we talk about it in our group chat a lot, but like there's only so many words that we want to put in a text message about this team that we have like the patience for. You know what I mean?
Okay, so my initial thought is, are the Warriors contenders? You know what I mean? Do they have a lineup that's solid enough to make a playoff run? You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
last year showed that they weren't contenders anymore because they struggled so much on the first and second round.
Any more
And
in
they didn't,
general, or any more last year they weren't?
I mean, compared to when they won a championship the year before,
Yeah.
they didn't necessarily get better. They almost got worse in a way. Where I think some guys who they relied on in the 2021-22 season that led them to the championship, those guys kind of became unreliable again.
Mm-hmm.
And when all the pressure was back on Steph and Clay in the playoffs, they fell short. So I don't think they necessarily. So I guess the question is, did they reload? Are they contenders now? In going into the playoffs or going into this season, and like you know as we move along, like do they have the pieces who can compete, who can play good defense, who can you can rely on to drop 18, 19, 20 points a game in a playoffs behind Steph Curry?
So you didn't answer your question though. Is it a yes or is it a
Well,
no?
okay, so I
You
mean,
made
I
your
want to.
argument and then you didn't and then you didn't give it.
Well, that's the problem. It's hard to answer that question. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it doesn't look like it. But then, like last night, which was the Monday night where they played
Yeah.
Houston, it looked like that they had good off ball help. That Steph was creating his shot off. Clay was creating shots off the ball. It wasn't all on Steph. Wiggins was looking like he could be a good guy. His old self again, making shots again. And then you have Chris Paul, of course, being the facilitator that he is. So it looked like they're a solid gelling team, you know, but that's not always consistent day in, day out. Again, there was the injury to Steph, and it's been less than 20 games. So, like, the sample size is small, and I'm not going to hit the panic button, but of course, I'm used to seeing the Warriors blow people out, and I think those days are far gone.
I mean, like that's the problem with like the Warriors like fan base right there is like we have these expectations because we've been so good for the last 8 seasons minus 2021 whatever
Mm-hmm.
fucking season that was where it was Draymond and Wiggins basically and the D'Lo experiment, like that was the only season where we haven't. So it's like there needs to be a little bit more like realistic expectations of this team, and I feel like a large generation of this fan base was born or became started following this team regularly like in 2000, let's say 12. Let's give them a little bit of benefit of doubt. 2012, like the first season that they went to the playoffs with like Steph and like David Lee. So their expectation is like, I would say like a little bit unfair, a little, so like
Mm-hmm.
we need to get back to the realistic of like what this team is. And like I think the Spurs are always a great example of like of of kind of relating to what this team can be. The Spurs had those like dominant years, 99, 2003, 2005. They had their big three. And then after that, they kind of coasted a little bit. Like they were good, they were always relevant, but they weren't like contenders necessarily in that aspect. And then it wasn't until, the 2012 seasons like started coming along. Like older Duncan, Ginobili coming off the bench, Parker kind of on his last leg, but you had Danny Green, you had Kawhi Leonard. Like I think that's like evolution of this team that I would be satisfied in.
Mhm.
It looks like we're kind of in that middle area with the 2005 to 2011 period where it's like our players are getting older. We're looking for the next generation to kind of step up and not necessarily take over the team, but be like the role players of that can like support the flaws of these older aging players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and fill in the gaps. I totally hear that, and I
Yeah.
think that was a big hope for me when they got Chris Paul and was like, all right, this is a
Yes.
guy who's a second unit leader, who we're going to use as a second unit leader, who's going to feed these young guys and let these young guys flourish, become the players that they are, that they got drafted to be, and see them shine. And I think for the most part, we have seen that in guys like Moses Moody and Kuminga,
Yeah.
um, kind of really taking advantage of all these opportunities that they're given from Chris Paul. But also with Steph Curry getting injured, all these guys had to step up. And I
Yeah.
think it was nice. Like Kuminga had that 120-point game against the Timberwolves, but guys like Saric, who doesn't necessarily need someone to help create. Like Saric is a guy who can make his own shot. He could drive to the basket. He's a scorer on his own. So it was nice to see him in that role and be like, hey, no, everybody's gone. Let me step up and let me be the guy. And he's shown that he's more than capable, and he's a problem for a lot of defenses. And it's really nice to see.
And I think you said it best. Like there's also been like weird circumstances during this like losing streak. You know what I mean? Like okay, for example, so the losing streak basically started. Let's see. I mean they lost a couple games. They lost to the Cavs on the 5th, but the losing streak basically started on last Wednesday the 8th against the Nuggets, which
Mm-hmm.
I see that game as a win. This is the best team in the NBA. Like I was talking about this on the Oakland Warriors podcast earlier today. Like our schedule has been relentless. So we went up against the Nuggets last Wednesday, which was like a go all in game. We had the Pistons before that, so you could tell it like
Mm-hmm.
Kerr was kind of taking a little step back with his rotations. You look at the minutes of the guys, and it was down a little bit because he wanted to
Big
save
road
it
trip.
for the big road trip. He wanted to save it for the Nuggets, and they lose that game without Steph. Right? Looking at it right now, I believe this was without Steph. Yes. No, it was with Steph. Sorry, but it was without Draymond Green. So it was without Draymond Green, our kind of like our muscle, our physical like big man to like, kind of help beat up on Jokic. They only lose by 3 points, 108 to 105. To me, that's a win. It's the best team in the NBA in terms of just straight on the basketball on the floor. The two best teams in the NBA so far this season. It's not it's not the Celtics. Celtics look good. Don't get me wrong. It's not the Bucks. It's not all these other teams that people were talking about. I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not talking about hype. I'm not talking about personnel. I'm talking about strictly on the floor. Who has played the best basketball so far this season in the NBA? The Nuggets are one. It's not even close, and then the Timberwolves are two. So we lose to them. Then we lose to the Cavaliers, which is like that's a tough one. That's a kind of a tough matchup. They play really big. They play really long.
Yeah.
We pretty much only have two big men, like two true centers on our roster, which is Looney and Sarge. And like Looney's kind of you could argue a little bit of undersized center. He's only like 6'9". And then
I
we
think he's
lose to
effective. It's just his
he
minutes, I
is.
think,
Yeah,
limits
yeah,
him.
yeah. And it's his role. I mean, we don't need Looney to be anything but a rim protector and a rebounder. Like
Mm-hmm.
he needs to kind of stick to that. And then we play two back-to-backs against the Timberwolves, who are again, like I said, the second best team in the NBA. Lose to 6 points to them on Sunday the 12th, and then we lose that game on the 14th, which was that game was the game where Klay and Draymond both got kicked out of the game. Steph Curry was still having his nagging knee injury. Chris Paul pretty much had to put the team on his back, lead that team, and will that team to try and win that game, and they lost in literally the last possession. Like to me, that said a lot about Chris Paul, his leadership, his effectiveness that he has on like the other players on the floor, like how he just makes them so much better. So like when you look at the record and it's like barely over 500, I just can't like look at it and be like upset because you have to watch the games and look at the circumstances of the games and you got to kind of be like, wow, like they actually played pretty well considering like
Yeah.
the things that happen in those games.
Mm-hmm. I thought the Timberwolves game, yeah, I think we definitely could have won one, definitely dropped one. But for the two OKC games after that, I thought
Yeah.
both of those games were extremely winnable. And
Yeah.
yeah, we didn't have Steph Curry or Draymond, but even without those guys, they're in contention the whole time, played good ball, made a lot of shots. And we had the opportunity for guys to pop off. Like Pojemski, he dropped 20 points that last Timberwolves game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you got Kuminga dropping 20 against OKC. Like these are guys who can put a minute, and they're showing to Kerr at least, hey, you could trust me. This is what I can do. I can drop this and keep close games, even when Steph's on the bench. You know, when he's out of rotation, you can trust me. Give me the ball. I'm gonna do some damage, and I think that's good because I think Kerr sometimes mismanages his rotations, the minutes given to players. You know, I want to see guys like Kuminga and Moody get a ton more minutes. You know, even TJD, Jackson Davis, I like him. I like that guy. He's big, he's tall, he's lengthy, he's smart, doesn't like make a lot of mistakes.
He's
Could
physical
be,
too.
yes, could be an offensive liability. I hear that, but defensively, I think he stands very tall. But he's sending him backing down to the G League, probably to boost his confidence, you know, make him feel good. But I think those are one of the guys you got to keep on with the team at all times because he can really benefit, and we could really use someone who's athletic and big like him. You know, that's why you draft this guy, and he's already looking like he's progressing faster than Wiseman was at the same time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And I think the problem with Draymond, he had his injury and now he's suspended for a couple games. Like you're asking a lot out of Saric. So Saric's minutes are up by like 5 minutes a game. So you're asking a lot out of him. You're asking a lot out of Looney to like kind of like play more minutes than he's expected to. But mostly Saric, because Saric is like the only guy that can really like switch on to multiple players and play that defensive role, at least fill part of the defensive role that Draymond has. So like, why not give some of those minutes to David, to Jackson Davis, and let's see if he can kind of fill a part of that role. Maybe just even if it just gives Saric like 5 minutes of rest on the bench, like that goes a long way.
No, I hear that, and it's kind of weird because the OKC games, or at least the Timberwolves games, you don't want to necessarily concede like, all right, our three of our best players are out, like we're probably going to lose this game, so let's just try
I thought they were going to
experimenting.
do that too. I was like shocked that they were hanging in there.
Yeah, and they did, and it seemed like it in hindsight, it seemed like a good plan now because it was a close game that was very weird possibility they could win. And then even with OKC, those are games you could win. You know what I mean? You have Draymond out, you had Steph out one game, but you still got Klay, Wiggins. Like these are still games you can win. So I
That's
kind
a
of
really tough
understand.
team now, though. Like that's a good team. That's going to be
Oh, for
a
sure.
competitive team this year, and they're young, so that's
Mm-hmm.
also something good.
Yeah, some of these teams where what they probably won 20 games last season before. Some of these guys who you thought, oh, this is gonna be a wash, easy pickup, easy win here. Those teams don't exist, not at least not right now. OKC's looking tough to beat.
Well, they
Houston's looking
do.
tough to beat.
They do. We just haven't played them yet, like except for
Yeah,
Detroit. Like we haven't played the
Detroit.
Blazers.
Yeah.
We haven't played Utah. We haven't played like a lot of these like teams at the lower tier yet.
I mean, look at the Pelicans. Like the Pelicans, they
Yeah.
did have a lot of injury and drama, but now they're looking pretty solid.
Yeah.
Um, so the Warriors, they need to make sure that they are above that. I mean, as of right now, from what I'm seeing, the product on the court, they don't look like a top 5 seed in the playoffs. They don't. They look like a 6, 7, or 8, maybe even a play-in. You know what I mean? So something I think needs to change to put us over the edge. Otherwise, we're gonna get wrapped up playing these teams that are gritty and young. And after seeing what the Kings did to us in the first round, although we beat them, they tired us out. We were useless in the second round. You know what I mean? And that's what young teams are going to do to us if we don't get that buffer of wins. Because look at Jokic. Jokic, he's probably going to get tired down the stretch, but he gets that first round pick and first round seed. They're going to play some scrub team like the Timberwolves were kind of scrubby last year, but not as much this year.
No,
And then
the
he was able
Timberwolves
to.
are going to be like a top 4 seed, I think.
True, yeah. But then he basically coasted to a championship. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's some good teams, but the Nuggets were just looking really good. Like good teams do that. They set themselves up for that, and the Warriors are looking like they're on track to not help themselves out.
But I just have a hard time accepting that. Like, I mean, what do you want them to make like a move in the deadline? Like, I just have a hard time accepting that because of all the factors that have happened, like the Draymond Green suspension now. Steph Curry's hurt. Andrew Wiggins' big thing is he came into camp out of shape, and he's kind of playing himself into shape. Look at what he did last Saturday. It feels like he's getting in more shape, puts down 30 points. Like I don't know, man. And I do want to say one thing about the young guys, Moody and Kuminga and Pods too, is like it was more Moody Kuminga, because the last 3 seasons you look at their stats and it's not quite there, and you think like their points per game are up, their like assists, their rebounds per game, all that stuff, it's up. And without looking at first glance, you think like, oh, they're getting better stats because they're playing more. It's like, no, they're actually like super efficient. Like, I don't know if you saw in my article, I pointed it out. Like they are like, they're shooting at higher percentages. Like Moody is playing in incredible defense at a high level. So like, I think that those kids are ready to play and have bigger roles in the second unit. And I'm been really impressed with them. It's just the top of our team. It's the stars that need to like have more consistency, and that, that comes with a lot of things. That comes with playing more. I don't know what's going on with Klay. He's in a contract year. He's got to figure that shit out. Because if he's not playing at least like, 18 points a game level playing, like I think we're dead out of the water. Andrew Wiggins has got to play better. I got to get in better shape. He's shooting 22% from 3. That's definitely got to go up. Like, I just, I don't think it's the role guys. I genuinely think that it's the stars, the 4 stars that we have, and like there needs to be more consistency out of that. And if we get that, I think that we're a top 3 team in the West, top 4 team in the NBA.
I agree. I don't think the issue is adding another piece to this.
Yeah.
I think the issue is, one, the Warriors got to start gelling, kind of a new makeup in the team.
Yeah.
They got to get out the kinks. Now, Klay, the reason I'm not going to hit the panic button on Klay, one, yes, contract year. But 2, defensively, he's still a plus. He's still a high IQ guy, still making great passes, great plays, getting in the right position. It's just his shooting. But we all know Klay's a shooter. You're going to go through slumps. You go streaky a little bit. Klay's going to find it. And then next thing you know, he's going to have a 6-game streak where he's just dropping 20, 21, 22 on lights out shooting. So it's going to come. I'm not going to panic there. Wiggins, I would like to see some
real quick with Klay. I think what's helped him, like, he's been efficient on defense, but I think what's helped him, and what I think we'll see help him more offensively down the road, because it's a known thing. You work harder on defense, you suffer a little bit on offense, because then you're just exhausted on offense. Like, it's very rare that you find 2-way players that are just absolute studs on offense and defense. I think what helps Klay's situation this year as opposed to last year is he has a lot of help around him, like better defensive players at the guard position to like give him some relief. Like I said, Moody, he's been playing amazing on defense. Chris Paul always has been a pretty solid defensive player, but his like defensive plus minus is like 0.5 point percentage up from like the last 3 seasons. So he's playing high quality defense. Brandon Podziemski, dude, that guy, he, like, I was talking about it on the Warriors podcast, or the Oakland Warriors podcast too. And not only is he like the perfect replacement for DiVincenzo because he looks like DiVincenzo, but he plays exactly like him. He's a spot up shooter, and he can actually shoot up the dribble too really well, which he didn't do as well. DiVincenzo didn't do. He has a high basketball IQ, so that he's always in the right position on defense, and he just rebounds the fuck out of the ball. It's insane. Like, he's averaging almost 7 rebounds a game for a guard. That's wild.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was at that Timberwolves game where Klay and Draymond got ejected, which was wild. But I was watching Podziemski, and I think my brother had Podziemski points. He bet on it.
That's such a random bet for your brother to take. Like,
it was so funny.
That game, like the game afterward, I would see, but not during that game.
I think he was lying was like something real low. But we were watching him, of course, and I was being excited. And I was looking at his shot selection, and a lot of his shots are really good. A lot of warm-up threes, a lot of solid middies, easy layup finishes where he's just being a smart, talented player and making good decisions and showing that, hey, these are my valuable minutes. Let me be as efficient as I can. Because, I mean, look at Kuminga last year. He was disappointed in the amount of minutes he got in the playoffs. You either stay upset and ask for a trade, or just realize, hey, I'm on a leash. If I want to, get a longer leash, let me show how much I could do in the 13 minutes a game I get or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to be more efficient so you can earn those things. And like, just off of vibes, you can't coach like that way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Totally.
I get kind of Kerr's mindset. I disagree with it sometimes, but it is what it is.
But he's never had to go deal with like young guys like this. He came into a team that had a few young guys, but mostly like a
Mhm.
large veteran presence. There's already established like good team. And then, Kevin Durant comes around, same thing. Like he's never really had to like mentor these young guys. And I think the
Mhm.
way he's handled it this offseason is the best way you could have handled it. Like Kuminga and Moody are clearly frustrated in terms of like they're visibly frustrated. We saw the videos of like Kuminga, throwing his hands up on the side or on the sideline during that last playoff series, like in frustration that he can't play. So what does Kerr do? He invested in him. All right, I'm gonna get you a veteran guard who's gonna lead you in the second unit, and I need you to work this offseason. What does Kuminga and Moody do? They lived in the gym all offseason. And it's showing, dude. Like I can't stress enough. Like they are not just putting up big numbers; they are putting up efficient numbers, which is what you need from bench guys.
Yeah, I gotta say that CP Kaminga pick and roll where he gets it kind of
Yeah,
like
dirty.
just underneath the free throw line and he just elevates and dunks or goes up high. That's so
Well, and
nice.
and he's like
That's so
developed that
nice.
mid range, like at the top of the key, and he's just like crushing that
Yeah.
shot. That helps that pick and roll
And
so
so
much
guys are
too.
gonna have to respect that, and then all that's just another step for him.
Yep.
And he's so athletic that he can get up and yam it on him.
And then when he plays with Saric and Chris Paul is like the best pick and roll combination on our team
Uh-huh.
right now. They are crushing it. So Chris Paul has two guys that he can pick and roll with in that second rotation, and then he could dish out to Moody to see that
Yeah.
we're talking ourselves into it. It's not the second unit; it's the
No,
starters that need to
it's
step
the
up.
starters for sure. And I mean, let's talk about Draymond, really, because
Yeah,
he's a
yeah.
starter. We understand his worth to the team, but at a certain point, when does his antics become detrimental? You know what I mean?
I mean,
I would,
I could argue they became detrimental last year, but we put up with it and we figured it out, and they made their
yeah.
decision. Now, like I would say for basketball reasons, like on the court, I think the Warriors made the right decisions, but like in terms of like just fueling his ego and fueling like just kind of like making it seem like it was okay for him to act that way, it did
Mhm.
not help the situation at all.
I agree. I was listening to Kawakami. He was interviewing Bob Myers. Bob Myers basically said, "Hey, Draymond, you messed up Game 10. You get one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you already messed up early. You can't mess up anymore. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, hey, we got this out of the way. You got it out of your system. Don't mess up anymore. You know what I mean? Like you're on a short leash. You need to contribute to the team. We can't have you missing any more games. So it's got to. I'm hoping that it's a wake up call for Draymond, who's like, man, I'm so valuable to this team, and when I'm not there, it's bad. I got to smarten up and become a better player, not just for me, but for my team. Otherwise, he might get the boot, man. Honestly, like money's got to get paid to certain players. A hard decision will have to be made, and if he keeps underperforming or doing all these crazy things, I see no path where he's reasonably going to stay on the team and everybody will be okay with it. I just don't
But
see
he
that.
he
Like,
signed that contract in the offseason, so you have to trade him. So you're just trading him at 75 cents on the dollar just to get him out.
you can't be fighting people on the court, man. That's that's just the name of
But
the
you
game.
hate
Like,
Rudy Gobert. You hate
I
Rudy.
I absolutely hate Rudy Gobert, but I also hate 5 game suspensions and where
Yeah.
we lose them all. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we got that one against Houston. When does he come back? He comes back Friday against San Antonio.
So he's done 3 games so far. So no, it will be
No, he
right.
misses out. He misses
He's served 5 games. So it's no, it'll be
the San Antonio game is the last game
Tuesday.
he misses.
Yeah, Tuesday against the Kings. Okay,
What were we talking
I
about?
wanted to ask you next about so you saw my piece about the Warriors second best player rankings.
Yes.
So the idea behind this piece was like last year it felt like we didn't have like that for sure second best player. For years and years and years in the Warriors, it was obviously everybody who knows basketball knows that Steph Curry is the Warriors best player. He has been since 2012. when Monte Ellis was traded away, and Steph Curry was the star. They built around him.
Mhm.
For years it was Klay and Draymond, and then Kevin Durant came along, and it was Kevin Durant. And then 2 years ago in that championship run in 2022, it was Andrew Wiggins, hands down. No question about that, especially his impact on both sides of the floor. But last
Mhm.
year, with Wiggins being gone for half the season, maybe even more than half the season, but for most of the season, no one. It was hard to kind of find someone to fill that role. I feel like the first half of the season it was Jordan Poole. Second half of the season maybe it was Draymond Green. But like right now, there's no definitive person who's like taking that mantle and just like I'm the second best player. Steph like doesn't have his sidekick he can rely on to score 20 points when like other guys
Mhm.
are slacking, or if he's getting double teamed he can know he can dish to them and that person's going to go off to like change the defense around. Like there isn't that sidekick. So I made this list, and it's going to be an ongoing bit that I'm going to do all season about like I'll update that list of like the second best player.
Who's the
um
shit? Who's number two?
so what did you think about the rankings, and who, in your opinion, holds that current mantle right now?
So before as I started reading it, I knew it was gonna be a list coming wrong. And I had already in my head knew that you were gonna list Chris Paul as number one
Why'd you
because
why'd you say that?
I couldn't think of anybody else, and I'd say who's the most valuable to the team, besides Steph, and it seemed like it was Chris Paul. So I knew that going into it, but as I was scrolling, I tried to guess who the 2 through 5 was going to be,
Mhm.
and it's a little different than I thought. At least, but what you put.
Yeah.
So number two, you put Moody. I would have
Mhm.
guessed Saric.
It
Yeah,
was between those two, which like spoiler alert, Sarge was 3, so like it's not that big a difference.
yeah,
But I went with Moody because I felt like his defensive impact was extremely under the radar for this team so far this year.
yeah. I hear that. And Moody is great, and but he doesn't seem like he's like an off the ball creator. Like he won't. He's not a guy who's gonna bring up the ball. He's gonna be. He's one of those guys who sits in the corner and hits a three, or he'll put one back in. But you don't see him drive into the lane a lot. And if you want to be the second best player, and I guess it's second best player, not second best scorer. That's kind of how I was thinking it, though.
Mhm.
I don't think Moody is as skilled as a scorer compared to other guys to be the number two behind Chris Paul. And that was my only thing. But I guess we're probably splitting hairs there between him and Sarge. So I agree. Yeah, I could have flip flopped the 2 and 3, but
I
it's
would
all the same.
so I would argue that I see, like Saric is filling a really important role right now with Draymond Green being out, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that he is taking a big brunt and he is delivering and he is doing it very well. Um, but you could argue Moody has been filling a role on this team that has been lacking so far all season, and that's kind of Klay Thompson's role of like the spot up shooter. And
Yeah.
like like Klay Thompson's not a big guy who creates with the ball either. And you don't really want that, especially a team with Chris Paul and Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Like you want someone who's going to move off ball and who's going to catch and shoot and who is reliable. And like Moody's been doing that, and he's been making his shots. He's shooting the second highest 3-point percentage, at least of guys who are taking more than 3 threes a game. He is shooting the second highest 3-point percentage on this team at 34%, which is like, that's pretty mediocre, but it's important so far this season with this team because no one else is shooting that well except for Pods, but Pods isn't been getting the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like he's rebounding on an insanely high rate, and yeah, I can't stress enough the defense that he's been playing. It's been spot on.
Yeah, I like Moody. I like his development. Um, he's one of those guys where sometimes I feel like if he got traded or he went to another team, he'd blow up and be like a 25 points per game kind of guy when given like the room to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad he's on our team. I just want him to flourish into that here under his limitations, what he's been given.
Yeah.
I like Moody. Moody's the man. You know what I mean? Now, I kind of wish when they were doing the FIBA tournament and they had all these young guys like Anthony Edwards, Austin Reeves. I kind of wish a Warrior got in there You know
Yeah,
what I
but I
mean?
just don't see a world where a Warrior gets in
I
on the
know it would
team
have been
because
nice
of
if
how they
Kaminga
play.
snuck in and he was able to get some of those reps, and
I
but
think I
nobody was good enough.
I think if it's this coming summer, not the Olympic team because Olympic team's gonna be stacked. It's
Yeah, for
The
sure.
FIBA team. I think it was this next coming summer. Maybe Moody sneaks in, or if it, or maybe a couple years down the line, maybe Pod sneaks in there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. But all those guys who were in FIBA are all making a huge jump,
Yeah,
and
they
that's kind
always
of what
do
we
too.
need. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And the Warriors, and not Warriors, the Lakers are lucky that Austin Reeves is coming back and he looks lights out. He looks like the number two over
yeah,
there. So that's kind of what I wanted for the Warriors, but
yeah.
we're not going to necessarily get it.
All right, what
Um,
else?
your fourth one, this one surprised me the most.
Draymond.
I didn't think he'd even make the list.
His numbers are just undeniable. Did you
Yeah, but
see
he was
them?
suspended for 5 games. Like
I
that's
know.
that's
So
got to knock him off the list.
he's only played 9 games, and for the listeners, his stat line here, I have it right here. So it's 8 points a game, which is about where he's been living in that, points wise the past few seasons. 5.1 rebounds, 5.2 assists. His defensive plus minus is 2.3. That's the highest on the team. And I mean, his 3-point percentage, which I don't know why it's not on here. It's like he's at like 45%, and he's
Yeah,
shooting
he's
from the
made some
field
solid threes.
50%. Like he's also just making shots in general. So like it's his field goal percentage and his 3-point percentage that like I couldn't look past. Yes, his he hasn't played that much, but that's why he's fourth and not second. You know what I mean? Because
I hear that. I
yeah,
would have liked to see Kaminga over him, at least. That's what I was.
Kaminga's
That's what I would have guessed.
but Kaminga's defense is just not there. Like he's a liability on defense, and like you
Mhm.
see it when you watch the games. Like there's always possessions where he is in the wrong place and he looks confused, and it's a big play, and he just like that's it's been his issue since he's joined this team, and he just hasn't quite gotten it yet, and he'll get it. He looks better than he did last year. Like, and one thing I do love, again, going back to Chris Paul, praising Chris, every single member of this rankings, like their impact, Chris Paul's impact has an impact on their play this season. Like it's
Yeah,
not even close. And like the thing that I love about Kaminga and his relationship with Chris Paul so far is like you see those mistakes happen. They go into a timeout, and Chris Paul puts his arm around Kaminga and he talks to him like back to the huddle, and like the next play, he's on top of it. He's in the right spot and he makes a
Mhm.
big defensive play. Like that's just kind of how he is. He's just kind of learning it. And then like I love how Kaminga always sits on the bench right next to Chris Paul and they're talking about things. Like he's just such a mentor to this kid, and like that, it's still early. I think midway through the season, Kaminga is going to be a much better defensive player, but he's still such a liability that and you need him to play that. Like his athleticism, he needs to be a better defender, and that's why he kind of
Yeah.
dragged down the list really far.
He made some weird. Not, he made some mistakes that I don't know that could easily be improved. Last night's game, I was watching when they played Houston,
Yeah.
um, Monday night, where he was guarding Jabari a little too close, and Jabari would get by him. So then Looney had to help, and that opened up Sangoon.
Mm,
And and Looney, he's great defensively, but
yeah.
he has to help out. Now, if
He's a last line defense. Yeah. He's
exactly
moving all over the place.
if Kamina played him more straight up, gave him a little bit more respect, yeah, maybe he shoots that. That's okay, but at least Looney's in the right spot to grab a rebound, and you don't give up an easy bucket to Şengün.
Yeah.
Side note, dude, I love Şengün on the
Yeah.
Rockets.
He's good,
I love
dude.
the way that guy plays, man. Man, that guy's
So
nasty.
he says that like his hero is Jokic, like that was his favorite player
For
growing
sure.
up and everything like that. So like he's trying to emulate him. But
He
yeah,
plays well, high IQ, physical, smart. He knows how to dish it, but knows how to get in there and score a bucket when he needs to. Yeah, that Houston team. If Jalen
so
Green figures it out, wow.
yeah, yeah. So what do you think of Pods getting that fifth spot?
I like Pods. I got a lot of hope for Pods. I think the fifth spot is exactly where he should be. He's a point guard who can score.
I just
almost
feel like
at
he
will.
deserved. I just feel like he deserved it with the way he's been playing the last 4
No,
games.
I totally agree. He's getting a ton of minutes, more 20 minutes, more minutes than I think he was expecting, and he stayed
Mm-hmm.
ready and he came out and he did his thing. What he had, I think he had 20 points on like 22 shots last week against the
Yeah,
Timberwolves. Like he
yeah.
was killing it. Like he was really putting up really good shots, playing smart. I like Pods, the Ginger Ninja. Is that his nickname? Which should his nickname be? He's got to get one
I
soon.
I'm always hesitant to give any ginger like the actual like ginger like nickname because I don't know if it's PC or not. So I, you know, um, yeah. So I hope listeners will go read it because it goes into more depth why each player is at each ranking, especially Chris Paul at number 1, like what he's contributed to the team, and like it really breaks down numbers and stuff like that. But for the rest of it, Kevon Looney went to 6, Klay Thompson was 7, Kuminga was 8, and Andrew Wiggins is 9. I explained why those guys who will all probably, if you were to like think about this preseason wise and rank these players, probably all those guys you would think would be at the top of the list as opposed to bottom, but it maps out exactly what.
You don't have
What.
any Gary Payton on there, and Mittens
Uh,
has been locked up defensively.
he's been hurt and recently, but also he's kind of a one trick pony. That's why I didn't put him on there. He'll definitely make this list out at some point,
I
but
hear you.
because he's kind of a one trick pony, just playing good defense, it's hard to. It's kind of what I said with Kevon Looney when I ranked him 6. It's like he's also kind of a one trick pony, but he is so important, his role on that team, that he has to be on this list. Where Gary Payton, you know, his role is important when they play Milwaukee. They need someone to defend Dame. When they play I don't know, whoever,
Cleveland, he was kind of stepping up
when
in
they play
Cleveland game.
Sacramento, they need someone to be like lockdown physical defender
Yeah,
against De'Aaron Fox. Yeah, but like again, it's only certain matchups where his role is like really, really important.
yeah. I think is like his bottom floor is Jose Alvarado. Kind of a defensive pest, but
Yeah,
not really an offensive problem. But his ceiling could easily be like a guy like Alex Caruso, who's just a great defender, but also is a problem offensively.
yeah.
And I think that's where he needs to elevate to. And you're absolutely right with a run trick pony, but he could do more.
And he used to be like his offensive game used to be just like insane athleticism, dunking on people and like being so physical, driving the hoop. But like he's shooting really well this year. Like he's got like
Mm-hmm.
a pretty high 3-point percentage. I don't have it in front of me. I think it's over 37% or something like that. So that's great. But like he doesn't like take enough of those shots to where I can give him credit for having that high
Mm-hmm.
percentage. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just bring him up because he's one of my favorite players on the team. I love that guy. That guy is awesome.
All right, we'll finish off just real quick. How do you feel about the Niners?
The Niners?
Yeah.
Niners are going to Super Bowl.
So you're back on Brock after past couple games?
I was never off on Brock.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's tough when your left tackle, best offensive lineman in the league, goes down.
mhm.
Like forget like Debo, forget like, Kittle. Like I feel like there's enough talent offensively where you can figure that out. Like Brandon Ayuk is so good. CMC does everything. I think the big issue why he struggled those 3 games was just not having Trent Williams. Like that's such a big loss.
Agreed. I mean, a 3-game losing streak, everybody kind of started, sounding the alarms. The first game that they lost was against Cleveland, and they only lost because of a missed field goal.
One of the best
You know what I
defenses in the
mean?
league too. Yeah.
Yeah, And then after that, yeah, no Trent Williams, but also I guess McCaffrey played, but he wasn't 100%. But that was his
Yeah.
safety blanket. And a lot of
Yeah.
those checkdowns, they're putting Elijah Mitchell in just to kind of spell McCaffrey a little bit more. And if you don't have McCaffrey, like you kind of feel a little differently. Like that guy is such a sure thing that if you're looking around, you get all this pressure. Let me just throw it out to Christian. He's the man. So I get it. It changes the game, the speed of the game, the decision making changes. That being said, he's not turning the ball over a ton. He doesn't look like a mess. He knows what he's doing. Mistakes get made, sure, but he's still the
Yeah.
guy. I think he's still the best guy on the team to throw the ball, the best quarterback we got. So you got to rock with him.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't, when he was getting like MVP praise, I was like, let's come down, everybody. It's the weapons
Yeah.
around him. It's not him.
Who
All
do
right,
you
cool.
think's going to get MVP this year?
I mean, I would think number 1 seed is probably is it Stroud?
No, I think it's between Jalen and
I don't know, man.
Tua. I think
Jalen's
Mahomes is
great,
still up there always because he's Mahomes.
but the people been giving Stroud a lot of because he's been. I mean, dude, that kid is good.
Yeah, I 100%
You
agree.
think Jalen over Stroud though, huh? I mean, I think that that those two are definitely in the conversation, but I don't know.
But like, what is the MVP
Stroud is
award?
that much
You know what
better.
I mean?
Oh, Lamar, dude, Lamar's probably in
True.
first. Yeah.
But it's like, remember that year Peyton Manning broke his neck and the Colts went from a playoff team to like
Yeah.
they won one game. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that's a huge case for MVP in my opinion. You know, I think Peyton should have been in consideration just because how terrible his team was after that. I think the same could be said if the Eagles didn't have Jalen Hurts, they wouldn't be a contender.
Their
You know,
defense is so good though. I don't know, man. I think they're still pretty good.
look at the Jets. They got a great defense. They don't have a freaking quarterback. They keep losing all these games.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So, but also I think Mahomes goes to that category because if the Chiefs don't have Mahomes, they're the Buccaneers. You know what I mean?
But
They're
his
not a
number
good team.
at the end of the day, your numbers have to be there, and because his receivers suck so much that the numbers aren't just there. So
Receivers are so bad.
All right, thanks Xavier, appreciate it, and I guess we're gonna record your podcast now, so this will be
fun. Fantasy football. Yeah.
Goodbye.
All right, thanks for checking in.